Welcome to Middle School Walk and Talk, a podcast series offering heart, hope, and health to members of our middle school communities. Hosts Phyllis, Fagell, and Jessica McGuire talk all things self-care, student well-being, school culture, and more. Middle School Walk and Talk is designed to support the concepts found in the Successful Middle School, This We Believe, and is a production of the Association for Middle Level Education. To learn more, visit AMLE.org. Today's episode, Mess Up, Own Up, Rise Up, Navigating the New Middle Schooler with guest Jack Berckemeyer.
Welcome back to Middle School Walk and Talk. I'm Jessica McGuire, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Phyllis. Today, we're welcoming Jack Berckemeyer into the podcast, and we're so excited to be talking with Jack. The little I know about him, he tells about middle-level education and students with humor and honesty and so much relevant experience. Jack, do you want to introduce yourself a little further to our listeners?
I don't know. I think that was pretty perfect. As long as you put Jack Berckemeyer and middle school together, I'm fine. So that's always a really nice introduction. The only thing I would add is that I've just pretty much spent my whole entire career in middle level education. I was one of those lucky people that got my undergrad in middle school and my master's degree in middle school. And now the only advantage I have is I get to go to a lot of middle schools and see a lot of different kids, teachers all over. You name it, I've probably been from rural to urban, suburban, you name it, especially in the last several years. So for me, I'm just lucky because I get to hang out with great middle school teachers, obviously great middle schools, and just kind of see what the pulse is and what's kind of happening within our middle schools. And again, I'm an unapologetic advocate of middle level education.
So I'm going to just jump in for a second because hearing you talk about going to so many middle schools, one of the things I love about the age is that it doesn't really matter where you go. The kids are the same everywhere. The developmental phase is so distinct. But what are you seeing? What are the specific issues these days that you're seeing in schools, the concerns people have?
Yeah, I think that's what kind of triggered this article for AMLE was on these 8 new characteristics of middle school. And I want to preface at the beginning, I thought it was me. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting to a certain age, I admit it freely, that I kind of feel like the old man on the porch going, get off my lawn. I felt like it was me and I couldn't relate to kids. And I was looking at it from a generational thing and I was like, what do I expect? There's a big generation gap here. But when I went to several different schools and saw some of the same types of characteristics, the first thing that happened was I said, that's not a normal middle school behavior. In my mind, I have known how middle school kids have acted for years after years, but that they changed. And I think talking to middle school teachers, especially veteran teachers, as I like to say, a veteran teacher now in middle school is 1 day or more. When I was talking to veteran teachers, they were like, I just don't get them like I used to. And so that kind of triggered some of the things that I was kind of seeing. And the one that did it for me the most was at a school in New Jersey, and a girl was on her cell phone, and a 7th grader, and a teacher, of course, walked over. And what would the teacher say? Get off your phone, right? And the kid turned to her and said, in a minute, I will, which I could almost live with in regards to a middle school characteristic. It was the follow-up that really made me realize they had changed. She then said, it's my mom. And she said, leave me alone. And that's where that emboldenedness really started to become prevalent with some of our middle school kids, is that filter was off. They weren't worried about hurting your feelings. They weren't worried about repercussions. They just kind of had this more willy-nilly kind of attitude towards adults. And I think that was something that kind of started the observations for me when I would go to schools. I was like, okay, what are these other trends? If they're changing, that's okay. Then how do we acknowledge it? And then how do we change our practice? So that's kind of where this kind of started, was just being a good observer of middle school kids and teachers and buildings to kind of see that culture, climate, and see what they're doing.
It's really interesting to hear that that's happening everywhere.
Yeah. And if nothing else, when I do work with a school, that's the first thing I tell the teachers is it's truly not you. My joke is I miss the old days of working with a middle school. They would say to me, like, is it like this everywhere? And I was like, no, it's just you. And back then it might've just been that school's culture, that school's climate. Now it was a collective entity. And I tell you, when I start off with that and start talking about some of these attributes, you can literally see the veteran teachers sigh like this massive sigh of, okay, maybe it isn't just me. Maybe it isn't just our school. Maybe it is a collective entity. And I was able to go overseas, and I was in London, and the first news thing in the morning show was massive teacher retirements and cheeky children. And I'm like, okay, well, they must be having some of the same attributes as well, because I loved how they used cheeky children, meaning their kids were also being a little disrespectful and those kinds of things, and the mass retirements of teachers as well, which is we are seeing obviously in the United States.
A little bit about what I heard you talk about in those stories was students and teachers struggling with basic school expectations and almost the calibration of that. How much do you think that's a result of the pandemic? I know we hear a lot about post-pandemic, and sometimes I think I hear that so much that I think it can't all be because of that. But how much do you think is a result of the pandemic, and how much is just part of maybe a broader cultural shift?
I think it's all the above. You know what I mean? I'm not a researcher in regards to what that pandemic kind of did to our kids. I think I'm more of an observer. And what I noticed is our kids didn't play basic school real well. And I think part of that's our fault, is that we didn't go back to some of those basics of like how to work well with each other, how to have conversations, how to deal with conflict with each other, how to be civil, how to say please and thank yous, like all of those things that make you a good human being. I think we might have forgotten to reintroduce. And part of it was the push. How many times did educators listening to this hear, we have a gap, we have an achievement gap, achievement gap, achievement gap? Well, we all knew that, but our kids also had a social, emotional, and behavioral gap as well. And we didn't want to talk about that. And so for me, I just felt like the first thing I noticed in that was this dehumanization of authority figures. That was a big piece where they would look at adults and literally say, I watched as kids yelled at SRO officers. Principals will testify that some kids have said horrendous things to them. And I think part of it is they used the vernacular slangs of, hey bro, which in that middle school brain says, you are my equal or you are less than me. And I think teachers kind of accepted it. And so that's the first thing I tell everybody is, your name's not bro, your name's not bra. In an informal setting, it's acceptable, but you always start off with, hello, Mr. Berckemeyer. And I know some of your listeners' last name isn't Berckemeyer. I understand that, but it starts with a formality. Does that make sense? It literally starts with that teacher-student relationship piece. And when I'm coaching teachers, and I can't believe I'm doing this, is if a kid refuses to say, hello, Mr. Berckemeyer, I'm kind of encouraging teachers to say, hey, when we get to the formal conversation, I'm going to walk away. And then when you're ready, let me know. I think most teachers think that that is something they were never allowed to do. And I'm like, well, no, I think you need to get them to that formalization piece. And then the second phase of that is once the kid finally says, hello, Mr. Berckemeyer, the teacher then has to say, okay, take out your earbuds and take off the hoodie. If those are expectations that you set for children that they don't have those things, why are you helping them if they have earbuds in and a hoodie on? Again, go to the adolescent brain. What it says to that young adolescent is, call me anything you want, do anything you want, act any way you want, dress any way you want, and the adult will give you anything you want. And that had to stop. And I think teachers, again, that's that sigh. When you see teachers, go, you know what? And so I tell everybody, you just got to slow your roll. You got to slow your roll. They come at you from 0 to 10, and they go from 0 to 10 quickly. And as teachers, you're going, this isn't even a 5, like simmer down. Like this isn't even worth a 9 or a 10, but they come at you and then you respond at that same level. And so I love that phrase, slow your roll, and start with, hello, Mr. Berckemeyer. Start with being school compliant and complacent. Let's go back to school 101 and some of those basic things. And I think people are just looking for that permission to do that because again, the pressure of that gap academically is pretty high. I get it.
I think too, when you're not conditioned to having to instruct kids in that way, when there isn't that, to me, what I would consider a skill gap. And at this point, it's normal for kids who've grown up in the last several years. And so it's just a matter of almost teaching them skills that you would have taught elementary school students and not feeling self-conscious about jumping in. One of the things you said in the article that really resonated for me, and maybe this is partially because I'm the parent of 3 debaters as well, but you talked about how unusual it is that kids want to argue every point, that they want to debate everything, which feels very disrespectful to teachers. although I'm reminded of something that Ashley Merriman, who wrote Nurture Shock, she always said that it's a sign of respect because they're trying to figure out what's going on in your head when they're pushing your buttons like that.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, doesn't mean it's okay. How do you handle or advise people to handle those moments where everything feels like a negotiation when it isn't a negotiation?
And you're right. And especially because we have teachers that necessarily don't understand young adolescent development. Here's what's interesting. And a veteran teacher told me this, and I'm sure both of you realize this. Every once in a while, someone tells you something so profound, you're like, darn it, why didn't I think of that? Like, it makes so much sense. Here's what the truth is about middle school kids. Their sole purpose in life is to push boundaries. That's what they are designed to do, to push boundaries, to negotiate everything. The job of a good middle school educator is to set those boundaries. And what we hadn't been doing is setting those boundaries. And so part of that is good relationships with kids, which we tell all the time, which is, hey, there's a right time to ask me those questions, and this isn't it. Meaning, because sometimes the teacher does have to get to instruction, needs to move kids along a little quicker. And that debate can then escalate because they're going from 0 to 10 quickly now. And then they get mad and you get mad. And part of that is slow your roll. And the other thing that I keep telling teachers is use the same phrase over. I'm sorry you're upset right now, but I need to go back to what we're doing. Hey, I'm sorry you're upset right now, but we need to go back. Here's what I tell teachers. You're not paid by the word. But yet we want to over explain it. We want to over talk about it. Like we want to why, like in that article, I also say, stop asking questions. Like, why are you running? And this happened at a school I was at. And this 6th grader turned to the teacher and said, it's fitness, and then the teacher feels like, well, that's sassy or disrespectful. No, he was answering the question. What she needed to do was say, oh, we just don't run in our school. I think we're afraid as educators to be fact-based, which is we don't run in our school. We don't speak to adults that way, and just leave it at that. And again, that's just good coaching techniques for teachers, but we think we need to over-explain and kind of go into their brains. And my prediction is, let's get through these next 3 years. And I think kids could be genuinely back to some of the things we saw before the pandemic, where we could debate them because they could do it in a politer way. Right now, they're just not as polite as we want them to be when they debate us. We sense the sarcasm more. We sense the judgment more. And let's be honest, we're more of an opinionated country than we've ever been. And so I think kids are emulating that as well. We tend to take offense to that. And then next thing you know, it escalates to a 10 when it was just a simple conversation that if one would have walked away or stuck with a sticking point, a common talking point, it probably would have de-escalated. Look at that. I was paid by the word because that was the longest answer ever for that one. I apologize. I get excited about stuff and I get so excited about it. But anyway.
No, it was great. And it was good timing because it coincided with my dog losing his mind over the garbage truck outside. So I could myself while you were talking. So thank you for that.
I'm waiting for someone to go to the pool behind me because I know we're video this. I'm waiting for someone to knock on my door, ring the doorbell or something. So I'm sure it'll happen.
So technically it's the walk and talk. So we're supposed to be walking and having a lot of things going on.
There you go. I'll fly to you. Where do you want to go?
You're in Palm Springs. I think you have a choice destination.
There you go. There you go.
Well, it sounds like you are advising teachers to just be firm and direct, which I think is really, really hard. I sometimes will overhear a kid saying something mean to another kid, and I will watch a teacher or somebody who works in the school hear it and just kind of stop. I'll see them take it in, but they don't do anything.
Yeah.
That moment, either it's uncomfortable or maybe they're worried they didn't get the whole story. But I think it's so important to just catch those moments and do that correction in real time.
And it's a simple phrase. We just don't speak that way in our school. Like, don't blame you. Don't blame, it's the school, darn school. Well, schools have rules. Schools have expectations, no different than malls, no different than Walmart, no different than a judge. People have rules. And our school, we just don't speak to each other that way. It's a simple little statement that is not angry. It's not accusatory. It's not meant to just say, hey, we just don't do that. Well, what a great way to build culture and climate. In our school, we just don't do that.
I love that.
I think you said something important earlier, though. You have to give teachers permission to do that, I think.
Yeah.
Because to Phyllis's point, sometimes things that should be addressed in just maybe that simple way, or these very simple practical tips you're giving teachers, just aren't seeming simple and practical right in the moment. It's like, I should react to that. How should I react to that? Is my reaction too big? Is it calibrated with our school's beliefs? And I think all this goes through a teacher's mind. I'm just wondering, kind of along those lines, as you visit schools nationwide, are there some practical strategies that you've seen schools use outside of just teachers implementing these tips? Practical strategies, teams, or systems a school-wide system has used to help reestablish the expectations and boundaries and empower teachers to do that?
I, I think there are two that are real quick. One, obviously, being a middle school person and my passion is teaming. Teaming solves 90% of all problems within your school. And here's the deal. It's teams sitting down and saying, what are our non-negotiables with our children? What are they? I mean, you can't say any, and by the way, in the old days, it was late work, homework, missing work, and grading practices. Now it's bathroom passes, cell phone issues. It's, how they enter the room, how they leave the room. It really is a basics. How are we dealing with a kid that wants 82 bathroom breaks within the first 9 minutes of class? How are we dealing if we have a cell phone issue? How are we dealing when a kid enters the room and is loud and obnoxious? The more we are coherent, not coherent, consistent, the more our students will rise up to those expectations. And I tell everybody, you better have 5 to 7 non-negotiables if you're a team. And you know what? They need to see it in every single class. And by the way, schools that I am working with that actually do those 5 to 7 non-negotiables actually see fewer discipline problems, more consistency. Kids are more compliant, polite, and actually live up to those expectations. And so if we know it's working, then why aren't we doing it? Because you have to get 4 or 5 adults to agree. And man, I'm going to speak bluntly right now. And I know every school has this situation. Well, I don't care if they have earbuds, or I don't care if they come in late. And I speak from my heart now. 32 years in education, you're allowed to speak from your heart. And that is, when you do that, you are sending a mixed message to a young adolescent, which is horrible. But what you're doing more than anything else is you are literally hurting your colleagues in the building who are trying to enforce rules. And that makes us adversarial. It increases our absenteeism amongst teachers because they're thinking, I used to take a half a day, now I'm taking a day. Why am I the one fighting this while my colleagues are not? Basically, the teachers become defeated based on one person not telling a kid to take out an earbud. And it's this big piece of pack mentality. The teachers have to be the pack, not children. And the pack sets tenor and tone. The pack sets all of those things. The last one in regards to consistency is the apathy. We are seeing a lot of kids who just literally look at the teacher and say, I'm not doing that. I joke about it. I miss the old days when a kid would like piddle fart around. They wouldn't necessarily say they're not doing it. They just piddle fart. You remember piddle farters? They're the ones that put hearts above the eyes. They'd color in the O's. You move towards them and like, I'm working. And you're like, no, you're not, but they wouldn't tell you. But now you literally have kids that go, I'm not doing this. And you haven't even handed out the worksheet, And so one of the things teams and schools are starting to do is a refusal to work form, which is basically when a kid is told to 2 or 3 times they're not going to work, it's a half a sheet of paper. And on that half sheet of paper, it says name, date, class period, and why you're choosing not to work. And then what's nice is the kid has to sign it. And I'm smarter than middle school kids. It's shocking, but I am. There's even a box there that says, I refuse to fill out this form. And here's what helps is you then take the assignment and attach it to that refusal to work. So when mom or dad is furious at you because the kid's failing, you open up a file folder and there are 16 rights of refusal with the work ready to go. What we need to do is get our accountability back to our children. Right now, teachers feel the burden of that accountability, of their grades, why they're not working, why they're arguing with us. We feel that burden. Wait a minute. Schools can get that back to kids. No different than if you have a good advisory program. Schools I'm working with on Friday, if there's the ability to do this, why are our kids sending emails home to their parents on what they're missing? Like, why are teachers doing that? Like, that's not your job. I mean, the job is to get kids to have some ownership of responsibility. It's your job to communicate with parents if it's a trend or something's big's going on. We got to get our kids. Come on, these kids are maturing faster. Then let's give them some of that maturity, which is that ownership and responsibility. Maybe if you do that, there'll be less apathy, less arguing about working, and they're going to take maybe a little bit of ownership. Schools that are doing that right of refusal, turn it around within 2 or 3 days. Now,
I would be curious
ahead.
on that form, do teachers end up getting more information other than just that signature and the refusal to work about what is at the root of why they're not working?
Yep. At first they don't, because it's adversarial, right? The kids are angry. But what else? And I thank you for that, because it's a great lead in. What teachers will then say, it's not that they're not telling me no, they just don't use their time wisely. They've spent 45 minutes. So you can use that as an exit ticket, Phyllis, where it's now, I didn't use my time wisely. And kids can explain, like, I really was on my phone too much, or I was busy listening to my friend who had an issue and I was trying to help my friend with an issue. So you can do it as you told me no, or you didn't use your time wisely. I just want some ownership back to the kid on why. And some of it's valid. You're right. If a kid literally says, I didn't eat today. I'm so angry. My mom yelled at me. Okay, cool. Grace is still part of us as teachers. It's just, we need some grace with accountability. My joke is Grace has left the building. She's now back with accountability. So we need a little grace and accountability together on both of those things.
Yeah. And you're setting the tone. This is the expectation, and you're not arguing. You're dropping the argument. You're moving on. You're putting it back on them.
And when they come in the next day, you hand them that stuff and say, hey, you want to work on it today?
Yeah, there's a way back.
Exactly.
I love that. I'm going to try that.
It's back to the basics is what it really is. It's like, for old school people, please know, it was a missing homework sheet is where that really came from for me. I remember if kids didn't do their homework, you hand them a missing assignment sheet. They filled out why they didn't do it. You attach the homework to it. Then when they come back, you give it to them. Like, it's just what I think with technology, we're afraid to go to the old school. Notice what I said, you literally attach the assignment to the actual missing, the form that they fill out, because that's a tangible. They can't see it on Schoology as much. They can sure see it when it's printed out.
And if they start to develop some self-awareness about what the things that put them at risk of running out of time, or if they start to realize they have some executive functioning deficits and they could use more support, or if the teacher can help them realize that, then you can target those skills that are getting in the way.
Yeah. Think about it. If 3 times a kid had said, I'm distracted by Robert, well, then move them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, first of all, I firmly believe we are overcomplicating education. Like, slow your roll, go back to using that teacher gut. Do you guys remember teacher gut? We lost it in the 90s. I don't know what happened to it, but we lost this teacher gut, which is good idea. Try it. If it doesn't work, try something else.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. But again, 32 years, filter off. I kind of like, you can do this. It's still doable.
I like the filter off because it's really practical tips wrapped around how the kids we're serving exactly are.
Yeah. And, I don't know where we're at with time, but I have one thing to say, because it's new for me and it's something that I firmly believe. If I was a building principal right now, our motto as a building would simply be this: mess up, own up, then rise up. Because let's be honest, we are dealing with middle school children. I want them to mess up. I want them to make mistakes. This is the last best chance. This is your opportunity to make some good mistakes. Mm-hmm. But the one that they're missing is the own up. Now, this is not research-based, but I would think that 70% of discipline referrals would go away if the kid would just say, my bad, I made a mistake, my fault, I'm sorry. Yep. And then you rise up and you change the behavior. Right. Again, why are we overcomplicating this? You messed up and it's okay. You might get a consequence because that's part of the ownership, but the next time, here's what you could do differently. Mm-hmm. Go to that front part of the brain. Let's start teaching that front part of the brain something new, something different to try.
Yeah, I love that. And we're rising up and we're taking ownership and making moves next time that are hopefully different and in our best interest.
And hopefully along the way, they learn to say sorry.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, what a powerful conversation. I think we could keep going, but I also think we are running out of time. But from shifting student behaviors to the importance of collaboration, the team, and just having humility when you're dealing with situations that come up with school. I think you reminded us, Jack, that while middle schoolers are changing, that our commitment to them really remains just as strong as ever. So I thank you for spending time with us today.
Very welcome, and I appreciate this. Anytime, you guys. If you want to talk middle school, I will find time, place, whatever, because I think people are needing this now more than ever. And I want to also say one other thing. And you know who else is needing this now more than ever? And Phyllis, you know this. Parents.
Parents, yeah.
Our parents need more help now than they've ever needed. I think for the first time as a generation, we can no longer say, "I understand what you are going through." I don't think we can. I think it's a tough road for parents. It's a tough road for kids, tough road for teachers, administrators, and why not start getting together and actually learning from each other as opposed to blaming each other?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much, Jack.